Uh, yeah, uh, yeah, uh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Press Coverage. My name is Kyle Senra, and the guest for this episode is Joe Pisapia. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm great, Kyle. Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. So, for those who already know, you already know the spiel, but for those who don't know, this press coverage is a look behind the fantasy football industry, content creators, getting to know who these people are that are telling us so much about other humans and what they do for fantasy football. Glad to have you on, Joe. Get to know your story and have the listeners, viewers, also get to know your story. Before we get started, though, a few things. So we do have a promo code. The promo code GF2. You can sign up to Underdog using that promo code, and then deposit match. I think the current promo is up to 250 in bonus cash. It used to just be 100 max. They're up in the stakes to get you in, up in the stakes for the Underdog. Of course, with Scott Fishbowl season around, there's also a few fancy QR codes here that you can scan for those watching on YouTube. This one is a direct link to Fantasy Cares. I know going for two, we managed to raise a lot of money for Fantasy Cares in advance of the Scott Fish Bowl. So it's something you can always donate to Fantasy Cares year round. It doesn't just have to be during draft season. So glad to have got to help with those causes, and glad that going for two is such a big contributor there. But yes, we're here. Joe and I are here. There's also people in the chat on YouTube. Jamie, yes, the All Star edition. So I guess you're an All Star, Joe, All Pro.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Good to see you, Jamie. Nice to see you, Mr. Cleveland Brown himself.
Yes, we call him the Cleveland connoisseur here. At least Dan and I do. I don't know that anyone else calls him that, but So if you also want to be like Jamie and join the chat, you can head over to Going for Two Live on YouTube, also on Twitch, Facebook, on X with some restrictions. Thankfully, Jeff Lambert is verified, so the boss, the man in charge, can help us out there. So apparently Joe's Darth Maul lightsaber battle lives rent free in dead. So that's either something we'll address, maybe even address it right now, but certainly maybe as the episode goes on. Welcome aboard, Joe.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. So let's go. What do you got for me? Let's do it.
Well, we always start at the first place, which is your first sports memories. So what are your first sports memories?
That's a good one. First sports memories for me are more baseball related. As a kid, I was just, I grew up in the 80s in Italian family in New York and Brooklyn. So it's a very baseball centric time period, certainly, and location. Gosh, I mean, first memory I have is I remember being taken to Yankee Stadium for Old Timers Day as a little kid. I kind of remember that a little bit, but vaguely. But then my first real big one was a New York Mets fan, as I was in the early, like mid 80s, because that's when it was the Doc Gooden, Darryl Strawberry, Keith Hernandez years, the 86 Mets, that whole thing. And I remember my first Mets game, going there, being so excited on my birthday, and it getting rained out. And it should have been probably more of a harbinger to stay away for the rest of my life. But then, they won the World Series and they came back, and it was this glorious thing. And I was such a big optimist, thinking they could always come back and win and everything was going to be great. And it's kind of scarred me for life. I should have just listened to the rain out and realized that it was going to be a bad decision to be a Mets fan. But that's okay, because I was a Patriots fan in the early 90s, and then that ended up working out pretty well for me. So things came, I have a nice cycle every year of joy and pain in my sports fandom.
When I think of New York, I think of the Mets and the Islanders being connected, like they similar colors, the orange and the blue. The Islanders have kind of moved around. I think they're in Brooklyn right now. And how dominant they were in the 80s and haven't done anything since. It feels like that was the hail day of the Mets, was the 80s. So
certainly was. I've been waiting since 86 for something else here, and so far still waiting, Kyle.
Okay, well, it's funny that you mentioned like Darryl Strawberry, because there's press coverage is it's a nice concept, but there are other shows like this. Casey Kasem has the Get Real series, which very similar to this. I've actually had Casey on as a guest on this before. I definitely remember listening to an episode of that where someone talked about like one of their first sports memories was Daryl Strawberry, and it's just, probably because his name was Strawberry and wanted to play him in the video games. But yeah, it's funny that
I
the
remember
Daryl
waiting at a
Strawberry.
mall in Brooklyn for a signing for Dallas Strawberry where he showed up 3 hours late and then left 2 hours early, and we just, like, stood online the whole day and never got to see him either. But it was the '80s, and we know what Darryl Strawberry was up to in the '80s, so it should not be anyone surprised that he came there late. But, again, there were all these signs, and I should have been listening, but kept putting my head down, kept being a fan, so but, as more you do this too for a living over, last 15 plus years now for me, you do kind of lose a lot of your fandom. It does kind of people told that to me and I said, it'll never happen. But it does change because as much as it's fun, it's work too. So it's not quite the same as it was even 10 years ago for me, for sure.
But yeah, I think that the big game changer is going from watching football to participating in some way, and fantasy football allows that. So, what were your first fantasy sports experiences like?
First fantasy sports experience, first time I think it was in a fantasy league was, well, it's funny. As a kid, I created a little game with my baseball cards and the dice, and I drew a whole like field, and I had a whole thing, and I made my dad when he came home from work play this game with me where you roll the dice, it does everything. And now I see people selling it, so I should have been ahead of the curve on that one. I should have, but that was like again back in the mid '80s, and then the first fantasy league I ever played in was in the probably like '98, I want to say '99, somewhere around that time. So I'm an OG in that sense, but and it was in college, and it was an NL only fantasy league. And I remember baseball wise, and then immediately just, moved over to the football side of things. And I just remember being obsessed with it. And it was in like the early ages of the host sites for these things. So some of them were not great. Some of them were, and you found a good one and you kind of stuck with it. But, we were on that precipice of like, you kind of do the stuff yourself almost. It was right on the edge of when these things really started to pop off, and these, I think it was TQ Stats was the name of the site we first used for stuff. But yeah, that definitely goes back away. And the excitement of the draft, the amount of research I did for it was absurd. I remember going, yeah, this is really fun. I really enjoy this. And I think it was kind of like, love at first draft, if you will.
Yeah, I definitely remember my first league. I probably put more research in that than I did for the next few. And it was just, okay, I want to know every player, like how many fantasy points they've scored over the last few years, and kind of, okay, yeah, just have so much information. And I realized, okay, maybe I don't need quite that the second year. Then I think my second year was awful. So it's like, okay, no, I got to research more. Go back to that. But yeah, you talk about fantasy in the '90s. Nothing says '90s like The Simpsons, right? Apparently, Strawberry was in The Simpsons episode. So that's probably what he was doing. He was too busy voicing.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. Yeah, sure.
So yeah, you mentioned you've been doing this fantasy football thing as a career. I'd say again, smart man, visionary. The fantasy black book. It feels like that was sort of ahead of its time as well. So you've been a contributor in fantasy football for quite a while now. But did
Mhm.
you have any careers before fantasy football took off full time that you want to?
I did. I was a professional actor for more than a decade. Worked in a lot of theater and some film and TV stuff too, and was pretty successful in that realm in the sense that I was constantly working. It's a very tough business, just like this business is. Is like no business that's not tough, but that was where all my training was. And then a couple years in between, before the fantasy stuff really kind of caught me as a possible profession, I was working for Hilton Hotels for a few years, and I kind of rocketed through even though I had no experience. And it was a weird time in my life where I was trying to be normal and it just did not take. And I'm very grateful for that. I was very good at it, very successful at it. But at the same time, I just, it was not what I was meant to be doing. And it's very stressful. Hotels never close. And it was a very, upscale hotel. There was a lot of upscale clients and it was a lot of pressure. And, when something's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it's a grind. And then even working in sales for a couple years afterwards, I actually handled the NFL teams and NBA teams and NHL teams, on the sales side of things for a couple years too. But it just was not my favorite thing. And then, lucky enough to get back into teaching on the acting side for a while. And then, that's where the fantasy stuff kind of started to take off a little bit. And kind of when I wrote the first Black Book, which is, almost 15 years ago now. So here we go. We're here. And it's like the
Yeah.
25th edition of it, I think, between baseball and football.
Oh wow, congrats! Great anniversary for that. But yeah, JV says it's one of his favorites. So I know a lot of
Well,
people.
Jamie's right. It's a good piece. You should go get it on Amazon right there. Boom. There it is.
And there you go, folks. Don't have a QR code for that, but yeah,
That's all right.
Fantasy Black Book.
People
At
know how to use Google. I think now they're all right. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, at Joe Pisapia 17 on Twitter X. What's Shane say on the recent PLPs? Elon Musk's Funhouse. That's what I'm calling it now. So that one's fun to me. I'll stick with that. But yeah, I guess sticking to the script. So yeah, I guess do you want to talk more about what you do with Fantasy Pros? Actually, before we stick to the script and get to the other questions, is there anything you want to discuss there? The things you're doing?
I don't think so. I mean, look, what's great about Fantasy Pros is I've gotten to do a lot of different, coverage there, and getting to do the betting stuff, getting to do the fantasy football stuff, the fantasy baseball show there. Like we really, I think in the last 4 years, I'm very proud of the content we've done, and we have a great group of people, and a lot of those are my Black Book people. It's people like Derek Brown and Andrew Erickson and the Welsh, and all these been Scott Bogman who have come over and worked with us now in Fantasy Pros, and I think they've helped elevate the product over there. So I'm extremely proud of the team and very lucky to work with my friends every day. So that's because I'm too old for anything else at this point. I just want to work with my friends. I want to get up in the morning and I want to talk ball with my friends. And if I can do that, then it's a good day. And that's kind of like that's my goal right now. And it's nice to be living that out.
Awesome. Jamie's asking what movies that we can find you in.
No, we're not playing that game, Jamie.
It's not in the script, Jamie. Sorry, I can't officially ask the question. But
that's right.
I can ask Joe who the biggest influences in his life have been so far.
That's really interesting. Biggest influences in my life. Definitely family. Certainly my dad was a huge influence on me. He was a great storyteller, my dad, and just a really a good guy and just very kind. And I think that rubbed off a great deal on me. He had great work ethic too. He was always, very interested in a lot of things, and always, I think an intellectual person too, which was, kind of, I think, spurred my intellectual curiosities over the years. I'm definitely a product of some of my grandparents too. It's more family oriented in terms of, like who had an influence on me, but I'm also very lucky because I had incredible, acting teachers throughout my life that I worked with and mentors there. And then in the space too, when I started working in radio and television, I always had great mentor people like Bob Harris and Craig Mish, and some people that really, kind of took me under their wing. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know how much further I would have gotten, but I think everybody needs those kind of people. No one gets anywhere on their own. And if you want to get better at something, you want to work with people better than you, and that makes you better faster. So I think, I'm very lucky, and I've always had good mentors in my life in all the different careers I've had, but in life too, a lot of steady people around me.
That's good. And that is also a skill set to find people that can be good mentors too. So you've done good at that as well. Great job. So Brian Ford, also from New Jersey or New York. I'm not sure. I always get confused. I'm sorry.
Well, I live in Jersey. I've lived most of my life in Jersey. I'm a New Yorker at heart, but I'm a taxpayer in New Jersey. So I think that's
so are the football teams that claim they're New York. So I guess it's
that's me. That's me. I'm somewhere around there. Yeah, definitely.
Apparently, he'll meet you at the Rainforest Cafe.
There you go. Brian knows. Couple weeks. Friday. Be there.
Hey,
me and Erickson.
Sweet. Yeah, actually, I've had Andrew on earlier this season, and I've also had Brian and Jamie on at various points on the show too. So it's a big reunion episode. That's great. And apparently, Jamie is going to find out what movies you've been in. So but you've got to do the work yourself, Jamie. We're not giving away any hints. So yeah, and yeah, Brian Ford is in Jersey. I think I see. I'm pretty sure I knew that. Sorry if I forgot, Brian. But yes. So yeah, continuing on with the script as planned. What are your favorite hobbies outside of fantasy football, which obviously occupies a lot of time?
That's funny. I mean, I'm a dad with two daughters. One's 14, the other is going to be 12 in a couple weeks. Between my work schedule and their schedule of life, like hobbies, I don't really. I wish it was more interesting. It was like, yes, I enjoy woodworking or crafting beer. I have started teaching myself how to make cocktails in the last year or so, which is fun. I make a good old fashioned. I learned to make espresso martinis. So mixology's become like a weird one. I am a big cook person. Like I do love to cook. So I think food is more of a hobby. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy, I do bake a little too, but more of the cooking stuff. So yeah, it's funny. Like I don't have time for hobbies. I don't know what I what I don't have when I have downtime. Sometimes I just don't even know what to do with myself, which is weird. But hobbies is definitely more food and drink related, I think. Um, that yeah, I think those would probably be the two at this point. And I'm very proud. I make different kinds of mules now. Like I'm really kind of branching out with the mixology. So I don't think drinking is a hobby.
Oh,
I
okay.
shouldn't say
I
that.
thought that was going to be the cooking part. You're talking a mule. I was like, oh, that is branching out.
No. We're talking about the drinks. We're talking about the cocktails
Okay,
now.
yeah,
So
no, that
drinking
makes
is not my
that makes
hobby,
more sense.
but learning to make cocktails has become a hobby recently. So I think that probably qualifies.
Oh, awesome. I know someone, Zach. Oh, geez, wish I remembered his name. But he put out a recent like a mixology book for like
Yes, I
32
saw that.
different cocktails.
I did see that. It's very cool.
Yeah. So it's definitely becoming a hobby, and like I'm sure people consider grilling or smoking a hobby. So cooking counts. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
We like food. Food is
I
good.
love food.
I don't know if that's a hot take, but yeah, I like food.
Some people don't. Some people are not big food people. I'm a big food person, so some people are just not, which is sad. I don't know why, but they just aren't. Some people. So
So I guess what's one thing that the community doesn't know about you? That secret that you've been holding back for just this moment. So thanks for holding on
I
to that.
don't know about that. It's funny. I've like you said, I've done Casey's show and Murray's show and like all so I've been blessed that a lot of people ask me a lot of questions about past and stuff like that. And I think people know by now, as Jamie alluded, at one point I was a fight choreographer for about 10 years and taught combat. So that's probably something that maybe some people still don't know, which is interesting. I was an actor for a long period of time because I was an actor and I did study at a conservatory. Part of the training program was I did have to take dance. So maybe that's what people don't know, that I have taken ballet and tap and some other, different dance classes that were mandatory. And I was pretty okay, to be honest with you. So maybe there you go. There's one for the book. So, and fighting is a lot like dancing. So that probably made me a better fighter at the end of the day. Good footwork. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure. That's what they always talk about boxing, right? The best boxers are always
Right.
constantly moving their feet, and I guess clearly the best dancers are too. Did you have a preference between ballet and tap?
Oh, I did. No, I did. Of all the dance classes and things like that, ballet was the most uncomfortable in terms of. Let me just put you the attire was not fun. I was just gonna put it that way. It was not. You had to wear this thing called a dance belt, and I don't wish that on anybody. It's not comfortable. Do not wear it. So the tap was actually kind of fun. We did everything. We had uh, partner dancing. We had ballroom dancing. Ballroom would have been my favorite for sure. Learning the tango and all that stuff, that was good. And I ended up using it in a couple shows too. So crazy how those things overlap at different times. But
When am I
yeah,
ever going to
ballet
use this
was.
in my life? Oh, I did. Wow.
Well, you never know. It comes up sometimes. So, but my dancing days are behind me, at least professionally. Just casual now. Just casual.
So I am curious. Like, so Joe's Darth Maul lightsaber battle. Like, what is Jamie referencing there specifically?
Jamie's probably referencing an old Facebook memory. So I did train actors to go off and fight in films and things like that. And I was a choreographer in New York for about 10 years or so. And I had been lucky enough to train in a program in Philadelphia where it was a massive combat program. So we did everything from hand to hand to knife to small sword to broadsword to sword and shield to spear, everything. So I've taken the national tests and did all that stuff. And then getting to train other actors was great. It was a great fun. And I had a master class, so we would do some fun things in the last couple of days of master class in the last couple of weeks. I would take like the best fighters, and we did a whole recreation basically of a different version of the 2-on-1 lightsaber Darth Maul fight. So with
Duel of
the
the
two
Fates.
Jedis, and it's super fun. It was amazing what you can get done in 6 hours with committed people who work really hard. And always I do miss a little of that. It was a good outlet. You have a stressful week, you go teach combat and choke people up on walls and throw people around for a few hours. It definitely makes you feel better. So now I just cook. So that's it. That's go to the gym, I cook, I walk. I don't have the outlet of the violence anymore, but it's one of those things that I do appreciate it, in certain shows where they do violence better, when you see, great choreography and, great stuff like that. When you watch the John Wick movies or Atomic Blonde or things like that. One of my actors actually I trained was in the second John Wick movie. So, you do end up getting some weird stuff around there.
That's awesome. Apparently, Brian's dance belt is his back brace. So that's a Jersey version of it. Apparently, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know what Brian's carrying around there. So
The weight of Dynasty Saturday nights
There you
on
go.
the Going for Two Live network, which again,
There you
we've
go.
got lots of great shows every night of the week, including Brian on Dynasty Saturday Night 5. Jamie's on the Fantasy Cheat Sheet, which I think their next episode is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Jamie can totally correct me if I'm wrong, which I probably am. Actually, I don't think so. I think I'm right, but we'll find out soon. So yeah, we can now we've got to know Joe, and now we get to know more of Joe, but specifically with fantasy football. So starting with the fantasy questions, what is your preferred league format for fantasy
Super flex 100%. I think it's the most challenging. I want to say I'm like one of the, I mean, maybe it is. Maybe I can say I'm one of the forerunners of the super flex movement, because 10 years ago, it was not as normal as it is now. And I would constantly be pushing in the black book, why are we, fighting over 89-point running backs when 200 something point quarterbacks are sitting on the waiver wire? It's just bad. The game changed. And when the game changed, it became more quarterback oriented. It was every reason to utilize them more. Plus, it allows different strategies, different philosophies. You can stay alive. If you lose your number one running back, but you got great quarterback play, you can stay alive in leagues and figure it out and patch things together. So it's the most challenge. It's the best use of the depth chart. I think it's the version of fantasy football that mirrors the real NFL best, because we all know in the NFL, you have quarterback play or you don't. And I think in fantasy, I think it's just far more intriguing and challenging and up for debate than your standard. Like, I hate standard leagues. Half PPR is fine. I get the people who can only keep it kind of in the middle. The full PPR is good, but the super flex to me is when you have the other quarterback in it. That's when things really get challenging. And I think you see it now too. All the dynasty leagues for the most part are more super flex. So the evolution has happened, but it took a long time to get there.
Well, good job for pushing it.
You're welcome. Everybody who loves Superflex, you're welcome. That I was bitching and moaning about it a decade ago, and you finally got it. So there you go.
Because one of the arguments you hear against it is, NFL teams don't play two quarterbacks. It's not realistic. But then you pointed out how we value quarterbacks in Superflex is a lot closer to NFL reality than one QB.
Yeah, again, the talent is at the position of quarterback, and the fantasy points are there. So why aren't we using them? Right. So
we also have 12 teams as opposed to 32, so I understand
that also makes sense too. And look, the NFL's evolved. When I first started playing fantasy football, it was a couple wide receivers, but straight running backs in that first round. And now you see things are very different now. Now it's a wide receiver league, and it's because it's a quarterback pass happy league. It's the way the rules are structured. It's the way the NFL set up. So fantasy at its best should be a mirror of whatever the sport is.
There we go. So yeah, super flex for sure. And yes, I was correct. So fantasy cheat sheet tomorrow night. They are doing value players to draft in the last 10 rounds. So you'll get a lot of value from that episode, I'm sure. And so we covered Superflex, but outside of that, is there like other specific rules that you would crafting your perfect league you feel like absolutely?
No, there's things I hate.
Okay, things to avoid.
I hate the third round reversal. It's stupid. It was created because LaDainian Tomlinson was breaking the wheel in fantasy years ago, and if you had LaDainian Tomlinson, was like having a player and a half every year. So once LaDainian Tomlinson retired and the game evolved, it's stupid. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's not fair. It's dumb. And I don't care what end of the draft you're on. It just makes no sense. Like, you have a snake draft for a reason. And if you're not going to do the snake draft the way the snake is, then you should just have a salary cap draft at the end of the day. Like, I don't understand.
That's always my argument. Just do an auction.
Yeah,
there's no such thing as third round.
Well, then everybody shows up and everybody can get whatever players they want, and then you really are testing people's knowledge. I also hate tight end premium. Look, tight end is what it is. Playing more of them or trying to juice the scoring is dumb. I hate it. And tight end play, to be honest with you, I think is going to be much better this year. Look at last year. You see these tight ends coming into the league now in the last couple of years, like Pitts and Kincaid and McBride and now Bowers. Tight end play is taking off, and the position's taking off because everybody grew up watching the Gronks of the world and all those other guys do it. And now you have that evolution in the league too. So tight end premium just to me is just annoying. I hate it. It's another thing where people are trying to make something happen that just isn't there, and they're trying to fudge it to make it. They think it makes it better or more interesting, and it doesn't. It just makes it more incongruous to, again, what real NFL is. If you want to take Kelsey, you take Kelsey. If you want to take but trying to pump up lesser tight ends who don't do anything in their offense is just stupid to me. It just make no sense.
All right. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know for sure the tight end premium Brian likes because
I'm
he's
sorry, Brian. I
on the
love you.
recent
I love you, but I hate tight end premium. I think it's stupid.
because on the recent PLPs he's been encouraging like some of the people purchasing personal league podcasts, like change some of these to tight end premium. You know, you've got so many
Look,
awesome.
and that's the beauty of what we do, right? Is there's so many different ways to do it, and everybody should play in whatever leagues they like. And if you don't like the league you're playing in, don't. You know, that's easy enough.
All right, so yeah, we've covered the Joe's perfect league. Now, who are the perfect players for these leagues? So, Joe, who's your
Uh,
all-time fantasy player at each of these positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end? Feel free to go in any order you want.
that's an interesting one. Well, look, they all Tomlinson's the greatest fantasy RB ever, but I love Derrick Henry. So I guess my personal favorite one is just I'm a Derrick Henry guy, and I can't wait for him this year to lead the league in rushing with the Baltimore Ravens. Tight end of all time as a Pats fan. I mean, I love Gronk. How do you not love Gronk? Like big touchdown points, just crushing it, like just entertaining to watch on your fantasy team. Wide receiver, that's a really tough one because there's been so many great ones in the time that I've been playing. I do, modern day version. I love Justin Jefferson. Just love the guy. So like that's kind of like the modern day version. But if I'm gonna go back, Randy Moss is probably my guy. Like I was always just a Moss guy when he was in Minnesota. I was a Randy Moss guy. I just thought he was such an extraordinary talent. And then quarterback, quarterback is another one too, where you had the Brady Manning era, but now you have these dynamic fantasy quarterbacks that get, points with their legs so much more. So, it's hard not to be enamored of the Lamar Jacksons of the world and those guys who are, dropping, 3,500 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing. I mean, how do you not love those guys? But look, to go all time here, my favorite is probably still Brady. Like I'm a Brady guy to the end. It just am like you just set him and forget him, and he's always going to be there. He was always great for the most part, even in teams that weren't so great. He still put up some amazing stats. So give me Brady, give me Derrick Henry, give me Randy Moss, and give me Gronk. I think we're pretty good. And maybe I'm a bit of a homer in this one, but
Well, that's almost a triple stack because Moss had a pretty good season with the
Moss had a
Patriots.
pretty
Too.
good year with the Patriots. That's what I mean. Like you got to love that peak time. I think it was brief. I think people forget how just unbelievable it was. And they were doing things that nobody else was doing, so that was pretty stunning, even just back in the, '08 time. It's pretty amazing when you look back at it.
Yeah. Cunningham and Moss connection there. Jamie talked about a Vikings.
That was a good one.
See too many of those.
And Chris Carter in that grouping too is a really good. Those are some fun teams for sure.
All we have is Cousins and Jefferson. That's all we've gotten. So sorry, Vikings fans.
Yeah.
I'm a Packers fan. I kind of like them. We don't need them to win. So now we'll get to the final portion of the show, the high fives section. So I'm going to give you top 5 from 5 different categories here on Going for Teams.
Right.
I'll peace out with this intro and let you talk about your top 5 favorite game day foods. Since we're talking football and you love cooking, this actually falls pretty good.
I do. Look, game day foods. I'm still a pizza wings person for sure. Those are good game day foods. I make excellent chili, so chili's definitely one of those. Like that's a big football Sunday around the house kind of thing. Now, look, football's on Sundays, so if I get up early in the morning before TV starts on Sundays, I will be putting the pot of sauce up. And I'll make the short ribs and the meatballs and the whole thing, and that'll sit all day. So that's the ultimate Sunday football pasta meatballs kind of thing. And then it's funny, I'm going to extend the game day from the football. The one thing in every stadium I've got to have is I've got to have the helmet Sunday. Like I've just got to have it. I mean, ice cream tastes better in a helmet. It's just science. So that's like the one thing that I would put out there too is a game day at the stadium or at the ballpark food. I got to have that. Any place that doesn't have it in a helmet of some kind that's just lame. You can't do that.
All right. Yeah. And it's funny. You talk chili and that thinks back to memories for me. Like my uncle's brother, he would always make chili right around Christmas. And, in Canada, Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, that's when the World Junior starts. That's always a big tournament, the under 20 hockey tournament.
Oh, sure.
Certainly the States have had recent success, a ton at it. So America should care about it too, because they've been pretty good, unfortunately.
Are you wearing a Jake Seeley band kicker shirt, by the way? I can't see only part of
No,
it.
it's a
Oh,
it's
it's
a
no
one of
kickers.
it's a going for two shirt, but no kickers.
Ah, okay. I just want to
So
make
Jake
sure.
Seeley thinks like Jeff Lambert because
There you go.
they're
No,
going for
I
too modern.
support. I support that. No kickers, indeed. No kickers, good.
Well,
That's
so
the list of things I hate.
in Scott Fishbowl, did you play on MFL or on Sleeper?
On Sleeper,
Okay, so on Sleeper, the unfortunate thing is that you had to pick a kicker, but on
it's fine.
MFL you could go without a kicker, and so I'm also promoting
If that
my
is the only
strategy.
thing for dealing with that, getting to play on Sleeper, I will take that gladly. I love it.
Fair enough.
It's my favorite place to play.
But yeah, I did not take a kicker in the draft, so maybe I'll pick one up through the season. We'll see how scoring goes, but I was focusing more on kick returners actually.
Yes.
That scoring was so. All right, I'll take Devin Duvernay. I'll Kavontae Turpin. Sure, let's throw these guys at the back end of the roster. Kadarius Toney, why not?
There you go.
I'm in on Toney again. He's gonna be that late, so yeah. No kickers, but kick returners for sure. Thanks, Scott. So the next top 5 is top 5 artists or bands.
Top 5 artists or bands. Bowie's my number 1. David Bowie, my hero. Prince is definitely in there. Love Foo Fighters. Just saw them for the second time this past week, actually. Unfortunately, got rained out the latter part of the show, which is a bummer, with the electrical storm, but that's okay. So love Dave Grohl, love the Foo. Got to throw Sinatra in there. Stay true to the Italian roots. Stay there. And then 5th one, probably my favorite vocalist, Chris Cornell. That would probably be the 5th one in there. So that's a pretty good mix, I think, right?
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, a lot of great albums between all of them. Chris Cornell. You can expand artist or bands. He's done both pretty successfully.
Yeah, I got to see him play live about a year before he passed, and it was unbelievable. It was just him and a guitar in a small theater, and it was mind-blowing. It was just as good as that guy sounds, he sounds even better in person. It was an incredible gift that he has. Very sad when he passed, but some incredible music. And that last album he did, that last Higher Truth album, solo album, is just fantastic. If you've never listened to it, go out there and listen.
Yeah, I've always thought one of the most talented vocalists we've had. So thanks, Chris, for giving us what you did while you were here.
Yeah.
So JB's in the David Bowie division of the JTT Cup for the UK Charity League. So connection there.
There you go.
I do love Bowie too. He's pretty awesome. Also,
he's the man.
Sad with his passing. And then Jamie remembers the ice cream in the helmet. So it's.
Well, I want a mini helmet. I want a good size helmet. That's what you want. You want the right.
He was probably a kid at that time. You give the mini helmet to the kids, and then the adults get the full size one.
Oh, the full size. No, now they're putting like the real size helmets with nachos and stuff in it. I support that too. I definitely support that.
All right, so we've got the Fantasy Black Book, and you know what? You are allowed to include it here, but what are your top 5 favorite books?
I'm a big Harry Potter nerd, so I love those books. I would say I'm gonna order them. Let's see, 1, 4, 3, 6. And then the latest Fantasy Black Book. How's that? Those are some of my favorite books. I mean, there's great book like Of Mice and Men is a great book. I just read a great book last year that was about the founding fathers and all of their different influences, like how some were influenced in college by the Greeks and others by the Romans, and how it created, the government that we have now. That's a fantastic book. I'm trying to remember the name of it real quick. But yeah, I like histories and things of that nature and biographies and stuff like that. That's kind of like my wheelhouse of that kind of stuff. But then like the Potter, those are books that I could read over and over again. So that's one for me. That's the thing. It's like for me, books is usually one time. So if I've read a book more than once, like that, then it's probably something more of that nature. That it's more kind of just fun for me. Otherwise I'm more on the educational or the life of somebody kind of thing. That's more my wheelhouse.
Call back to Jamie's episode where the Fantasy Black Book was his number 1.
It's a good choice. It's a good choice.
Great job, Jamie. You're doing well. I think great job, Joe, because Goblet of Fire is my favorite Harry Potter novel. So I'm glad that you mentioned it among.
Everybody loves a tournament. I mean, tournaments are just fun.
That's true too. That's why we're talking about JTT and SFB and any other abbreviated tournaments you need. And then so we'll get on to the last 2. I wasn't sure what order to go in, but because you said you worked more movies, we'll save that one for last.
Okay.
We'll go with
all right.
Top 5 TV shows first.
All right, top 5 TV shows. I do have some recency bias on some ones that I've seen recently. that have leaped up into the Last Kingdom, my all-time favorite, 100%. If you haven't seen Last Kingdom, go watch it on Netflix. It'll change your world. It's better than Game of Thrones, and I love Game of Thrones. So Thrones, I'll put at 2. At 3, I'm gonna put an old HBO show called Oz. Oz was a great show that I think had the world we live in now been, or around when that show was around, it would have been a far bigger show. I think that's an all-time great show. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3. Gotta throw some comedies in there. It's funny, like there's certain things you can just watch over and over again. Like you can watch the Seinfelds and watch things, but I think at a certain point, then they start to get a little stale. My one go-to that is always funny and I always watch, and I still think they're geniuses, is South Park. I'm still a huge South Park guy. So I'll throw South Park in there, and I will throw Rick and Morty in there too, because Rick and Morty just kills me. I think it's great. So something highbrow, something lowbrow. So or actually, South Park is very highbrow, and so is Rick and Morty. I think the smarter you are, the more you enjoy those shows, and I think that's a testament to the writing of it.
Not why I don't like them. I'm just kidding. I like them. I think it's a good sign. But I think South Park, part of it is they make sure they stay fresh. And
they do. They've done a great job of evolving that show and staying topical and staying on top of things. It's so good.
I don't think Last Kingdom is an MMA fighting show, Jamie. I think it's more like
Last Kingdom is the best sword and shield fighting you'll ever see. It's about the unification of the United Kingdom during the time where the Vikings kept coming in and taking over parts of England, and it is absolutely fantastic. 5 glorious seasons. You'll believe me. If you haven't watched it, go watch Last Kingdom. It's very satisfying. It's got all the right notes. It's simply done, but incredibly effective. The acting's great. The writing's great. Directing, the whole thing. The through line's good. The ending is good. Something a lot of people complain about other shows. I'm watching Peaky Blinders right now too, which I gotta say, I haven't finished the series yet. We're in season 4, and it is spectacular. So I was behind on that one, but I
haven't watched that one either, so I'm even further.
Oh, so good. Killian Murphy is incredible.
Brian's also apparently smart because he says Rick and Morty rocks.
There you go, Brian knows.
Good job.
Yeah.
That was never in question. And then he is it sounds like he is also a fan of Oz. So what do you say? Helped HBO move towards those must-watch series. I think.
Yeah, it was. It was one of those first big ones. Yeah, it was before Sopranos and all that stuff. So Oz was incredible, and a lot of big actors came off that show too. The J.K. Simmons and Chris Maloney's and all those guys.
Harold Perrineau, I believe too.
Harold Perrineau, yeah, that was a big one for him too. Now he actually went to the acting studio that I taught at, which is kind of fun. Yeah.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Mm-hmm. I've met him before. Really nice guy. Great guy.
I loved him.
And he walks fine. He's not in a wheelchair, everybody. He walks just fine.
Well, it's like I've seen Lost, so I know I've seen him there, but I was.
That's right. They all went on to, great careers, all those guys on that show, and they were all kind of, at the time, lesser known actors, but it was a fantastic program. Really well done.
And then apparently, so there's an MMA show called Kingdom, but that must have come first because we're talking about the Last Kingdom, which clearly
totally different thing.
Order is
still violence, but totally different.
Yeah, for sure. Who does the in Userak commercial show?
Mayhem is also both of the brothers, actually, Dean Winters and William Scott Winters, both of them also graduates of the acting program I attended to. So
that's super sweet. Yeah, all these connections.
Yep.
That's great. So I guess we'll end. We got a lot out of the TV show. So roll the camera. I'm really not an actor. Nothing's not on film anymore either. It's all digital. Let's get prepped for top 5 movies.
I think your favorite movies are the ones that if they're on, you're just gonna watch them. So Tombstone is like that for me, and I'm not a big Western guy, but if Tombstone is on, I'm gonna watch Tombstone. I've probably seen it a million times. It doesn't matter if it's on, I'm gonna watch it. The Goonies, I would put up there. The Godfather, if it's on, I'm gonna watch it. Where it is, I'm gonna finish it.
1 or 2. So you're saying 1 is better than 2, or your favorite?
1 and 2 are, see, 1 you get kind of the feel of the family, you get the Marlon Brando performance, and then 2 you get a really interesting take. I prefer 1, but 2 I understand if people like it better as a film because of the dual storylines. And that's another great book too. I would throw that in my favorite books too. That's one of those books where it's as good, if not better, than the films, and very true. The films are very true to the book, which is nice too. Sometimes they deviate a great deal, but you could tell that Mario Puzo was very tied into the making of that. So that's another book. If you've never read that book, it's a great book. Really interesting story. And there's some things that aren't in the film that even make it more rich. So how many was that? Was that three? Endgame, Avengers Endgame. I'm gonna throw
Yeah.
in there.
Well, I noticed a Marvel shirt, so I expected
You
at least
got you
one
got to throw
MCU thing to
Endgame in
come.
there, and maybe an '80s classic like The Breakfast Club. That's an all
Okay.
timer for me too. I got to throw that in there. So that's a pretty good list, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing this early enough, some people might be eating breakfast on like the West Coast, maybe in Hawaii
Maybe.
more likely. But yeah, um, Goonies took place on the same weekend of Back to the Future.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that. See, this is what people do with their spare time. They look through and they devise this thing, and it does seem like it was the same weekend. So there you go. The busy weekend. The '80s, like 1985, was a wild time. It was a wild time to be alive. Let me tell you, I was.
All right, some of us will never know. But we got everyone watched this, got to know Joe a little better. So thank you, Joe, for joining me here on Press Coverage.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. I appreciate it, and thanks to Jamie and Brian hanging out in the chat with us today.
Before we go, I will give you a chance if you want to plug anything. Again, the Fantasy Black Book, I assume, is the first topic, so I just did for you. But
Look, you
feel
can
free to
see me
expand.
on Fantasy Pros, on Betting Pros, and Sports Grid every Sunday morning at 9 Eastern. Great shows there too. We'll be doing full football when we come back this week. And then, of course, the Fantasy Football Black Book 2024. Derek Brown, Andrew Erickson, Scott Bogman, myself. It's a great team of people. It is out there right now on Amazon. The best dynasty content, the best IDP content, the best draft strategy specific for 2024. A lot of these magazines, quote unquote, are the same. The Black Book isn't, and we just updated it too. So it just got updated last week. So it's fresher than anything else out there too that's been sitting out there for 2 months. So not the Black Book, and you can get the cheat sheets too that update as well for their RPV. And we got a new thing called the ecosystem this year too, which talks about how to invest in certain teams and offenses and why you should be investing in them and how that leads to better fantasy productivity and also relative position value. Again, understanding how valuable a player is in the format and compared to the other players, that is how you create a strategy that actually wins. And still churning out those black books every year. And let me tell you, it's an amazing base of readers that we have. And every year, we have expanded that base. And I think it is very different than what you see else out there. Everything else is a little bit more hot takey and this and that. We're about helping you win leagues. So it's a little bit different than what you're used to, maybe if you're buying guides or things like that in the past.
Yeah, I think a heartfelt thank you, not just from Jamie, but from everyone who appreciates what you do in the fantasy football community. So thank you, Joe. And again, thanks for joining on this episode of Press Coverage. I'll be back